Hello and welcome to Fan OCC episode 11, where I take a original creature concept and create it in my own unique style. Today's concept is called Brog, and it's coming from a concept artist by the name of Taran Fiddler, who's from Canada. If you enjoy his kind of art style or his work, then please go check out the links in the description box below, where I'll have all of his social medias for you to go and have a look at. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more in the future, then please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and all other social medias. I want to say thank you to everybody who's supported me so far, and with that, let's get into ZBrush. So inside ZBrush, I'll start off with a heads plane sculpt model that comes with ZBrush, and like normally, I would just start to use the clay build-up brush to bring in some of these forms, the move brush, standard brush, the damn standard brush, just to get some of these quick and easy forms. I'm not looking to have anything too special, too clean, too precise at this stage. So just blocking in some of those very defining areas of the creature. And talking of creatures, this one is coming from an artist by the name of Taran Fiddler. And he is a freelance concept artist, and he does some of the most amazing creature designs, illustrations that I've ever seen. I've been following his work for the past 3 years, and it's normally around this time of the year in October that he'll have a little competition on his Instagram account, where he'll take every day in October and create a new creature depending on what he has written down. And they're normally in the realms of a were animal, so like werewolf or were duck or anything like that. It's very varied, and it's just amazing to see the sort of designs he can come up with in a day, and create within one day. And I highly recommend you go and have a look at his work. At the time of this recording, it's day 23, and his latest design is a were dragon. So definitely go and check that out. So returning to the sculpt, we're still in the blockout stage, and I'm just going around and simply blocking out the model using the clay build-up brush, keeping an eye on the little concept that I have of this one, and this one's called the Brog, and this was done a couple of years ago, one of his pieces. And so using the clay build-up, I'm just building up those silhouette forms. I decided not to do all of the body. I decided to keep it nice and simple and keep it to the bust and chest area, and that just helps to make this a little faster for me, because the videos normally take a while to make, and I kind of ran out of time for this one. But yeah, so just focusing on the bust for this character. I'd like to actually, because I've seen the full character of this one character sheet, and I'd actually like one day to finish this off and possibly make it a full body character. So as you can see, we're just blocking out the chest, using the down standard to cut in those muscle forms, very, very basic muscle forms, using the build-up brush, again, clay build-up brush, to build up those muscle groups, and using the down standard as a guide to where those muscle groups will be as well, and still very much very loose sculpting, trying not to think too much about the final piece, just going along with the flow. And now you can see I'm adding some more scales around the neck area, or gills around the neck area, and then just going around and blocking in some more of those shapes. We're using the Dynamesh at the moment still, and we're quite low in the Dynamesh topology, and that's how I like to keep it, very low at the beginning, so that I can manipulate the model a lot easier and get those shapes correct, and then I'll Dynamesh it and make more topology later. And finally, just to round it off, I just added in some eyes to situate the eyeballs a bit more, and the sockets for this blockout stage, and we'll very soon be moving into the sculpt pass, which will be a little bit more in-depth and detailed version of the blockout stage. So I'll see you in 1 second. So once we're happy with the blockout stage, we can then move into the sculpt pass. And this is essentially still keeping within the Dynamesh model, but we're going into a little bit more detail in the sort of approach. So you can see now I'm just adding the eyelids by duplicating the eyes and then just sculpting some quick eyelids on there. And then using the dam standard, I'll just cut in some areas as well. Making the extra pieces, so that the teeth, I just started to incorporate the teeth because it's kind of difficult to imagine your creature without all the other elements. It's difficult to sculpt the mouth area without all the teeth inside it, and it's about this part of the process where you can start to add more pieces and really go to town with it. So yeah, just going around duplicating and rotating the teeth a bit more and using the same tooth for the bottom as well as for the top, so it just speeds up the process. So it's at this point in the sculpt that I then go back into the Dynamesh and I'll start to add some more topology or resolution for the Dynamesh, but still stay in Dynamesh. I'm not quite ready yet to sort of go with a final model, and I'll still need to, or still want to be able to have that freedom to sculpt whatever I want and clean it up however I want without having to worry about destroying topology or stretching topology or playing with too much topology. As you can see here, I decided to enlarge the head a bit more, and it's at this point when you're sculpting your creature and you're not worried about the cleanliness of it that you can get away with making adjustments here and there. It's this point you really want to do that sort of thing, and as you progress with your model, you want to and you add in more detail, you'll start to use smaller and smaller brushes and a bit more topology here and there with the Dynamesh until you're 100% happy with how your design is coming along. In fact, I'm constantly telling people that I would spend 95%, when doing these concepts obviously, 95% of my time in Dynamesh just having fun sculpting, and then the last 10% will actually be the details and the colors and stuff like that. But if it was a production model, then you'd have to be a bit more conservative with the way you approach it, or realistic, and you'd have a deadline to stick to. But when this is your own practice piece, like these pieces, it's more fun to just go in and start sculpting and not have to worry about is it looking correct all the time. You can just go in and have fun basically. So as you can see now, we're really getting a lot more of that detail coming through from the concept. We've added some mandibles to his face, and I'm just now sort of scaling them up a bit more. The last thing to put in here will be the tongue, which will be a little later on. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm now filling in, or I'm sharpening or cutting the model because I know that I am happy with the overall look. I'm happy now to go in and start to really take care of the creature that I'm creating. So I'm typically using the same brushes that I had in the blockout stage, the dam standard, the clay buildup, the standard brush. I add in the trim dynamic just to sharpen some of those flat surfaces a bit more, or create more flat surfaces. You could also use the hard brush, hard surface brush, but I think for this sort of creature, the trim dynamic will work fine. Now you can see I'm adding the tongue. I'm just using a cylinder, and I'm just going to elongate it and then just manipulate it to shape it like a tongue using the move brush, and then I'll Dynamesh it and then start sculpting on it. Again, it frees me from having to worry about stretching topology if I use Dynamesh. That's why I use it quite a lot in these sort of concept pieces. So once the tongue is done, I'll then start moving into the detailing stage, where I'll add a lot more finer details to our creature. So once I'm happy with the sculpt pass, I'll duplicate the model, retopo it, and then project all the detail from the Dynamesh version to a clean topology version, which will sit at a higher topology count. So we're looking at 15 million polygons for the clean version. Now this is not a clean version. It's not a perfect topology that you could take into Engine. You could take into Engine, but it wouldn't be very good for rigging or for animation. This is good for sort of visualization or concept use. It just gives me more detail, more sort of topology to work with and add detail with. Right now I'm just using the very same brushes as I had before. I like to keep the brushes down to a bare minimum when I sculpt, so I'll use the down standard and really get in those cracks for the scales and define those individual scales. The trim dynamic, the standard brush, the move brush, and sometimes the smooth brush. I don't like to use the smooth brush too much. I've already mentioned this in plenty of videos that the smooth brush is it's good to use, but it can destroy any details that you might have sculpted or had the happy sort of accident in making really good detail without recognizing it, and then you just go ahead and smooth it and then you just lose it all anyway. So I try to keep the sculpting with the smooth brush to a bare minimum. Another brush I've just used is the snake hook brush, and this will just pull that topology out at a point, and I'm using an alpha as well to make it more sharp, the sort of brush end. This is great for creating little spikes or gills, as you can see here. I tend to use it a lot like with this approach when doing concepts, because it's just quick and easy to create spikes with a sort of snake hook brush in a very small amount of time. So looking at the concept, you can see that the concept is quite a smooth sort of body to the shell. It's kind of crustacean-like, insect-like. I wanted to sort of mimic that in the sculpt, so using the dam standard to cut into the sort of mid-sections of these scales to make it look like there's some flesh underneath the or in between these scales on the mandibles. And I also added, using some alpha maps, I'll then start to add some surface detail to the scales to break up that very clean, shiny look. So you can see here, I'm just using a alpha that I found online to create some variation in the scales. It gives it a bit more character as well. And it's also a very quick way to add detail without having to worry about going in and sculpting every single bump, scratch, wrinkle. Alphas are very, very good for that sort of purpose, to create detail very quickly and to help sort of break the blank sort of canvas that you might have. And it just helps you to work faster, basically. Now, there's always the possibility that you can overdo it with alphas, so I tend to stick to just a handful of alphas. Some people, they go a little bit overboard using them, and they're really there to just help make the model look more interesting. You shouldn't have to go too crazy with them. If you're doing a professional piece, like a character or whatever, then you'd spend a lot more time making sure that those wrinkles and alphas are working accordingly, but for this you wouldn't have to worry too much as a concept piece. So after this, we're going to move into the texturing stage inside of ZBrush. So for the texturing, I usually work inside of ZBrush. I'll just add a skin shader material to the model, and then I'll just cover or fill in the whole model using a base color, and then base color each individual subtool to the color that's the base of that model, and then go in with the standard brush, turning off the Z add and just having the RGB, and just go start adding extra colors to the creature. So you can see here I'm just using a red to define the red areas, but because I've already filled it in blue, then that means I don't have to worry about painting it in the blue, because I've already done the base coat for the blue, which is the most dominant color on the creature. I'm just adding some skin shader to the sort of chest area, defining the skin with to the scales, and then it's just a case of looking at the reference and trying to mimic the reference. There's also the use of masking techniques inside of ZBrush. So you mask out the cavity, and then you can flip the cavity so that it's on the inside or the outside, and then you can mask out sort of key areas and paint those key areas. I'll go over this. I usually go over this in other tutorials that I've created. It's a quick way of, adding cavity maps or stuff like that, or cavity paint overs and stuff like that. And that's pretty much how I use ZBrush to paint my model before I actually render it. There's still the posing to do as well, and then we can get onto the rendering. But yeah, just a very quick way of showing you how I use ZBrush to paint the model, so that you don't go into Photoshop with a blank canvas or a grey model to work with. It gives you a nice base to play off. The next stage is actually the posing stage, so I'll see you in a second. So once the texturing is done inside of ZBrush, I'll then move on to the posing, and I'll normally use the transpose master tools inside of ZBrush, and then I just sort of mask out the model, and you can use the move rotate tool on the gizmo to rotate the model to a pose that I like. It's not the best way, it's not the cleanest way or the best way to do it, but it's the fastest way. And if you want to create something very quickly, a nice pose for your character to render and for concept, this is probably the easiest way to do it. It's also a very non-destructive way to do it as well. If you turn on layers before you do the transpose master tools, it'll store it in a layer, and then you can turn that layer on and off and go back to the pose that you had before, so you don't have to worry about losing any of that information. So it is quite tricky though to get the model to behave when you're doing this, and you might have to go in with the move brush and just do some cleanup work or some sculpting work if it's really bad, because you're kind of moving a sort of static still model into a pose now, so you now have to clean it up. So you can see there I'm doing that sort of thing with the move brush now. The next stage is going to be the Keyshot stage, where we're going to take this model into Keyshot and use Keyshot to render out this creature. So I'll see you inside of Keyshot. Hey guys, if you're interested in learning how to sculpt and composite characters, then visit my online stores for in-depth tutorials, models, brushes, and more. Just follow the links in the description box below. Also, if you enjoy this content, then please like, share, and subscribe for more videos in the future. Now, let's get back to the video. So once all the modeling, the texturing, and the posing work is done, I decided to take it into Keyshot instead of using ZBrush's rendering techniques, because I wanted to try something different. I don't really tend to do busts inside of Keyshot. I prefer to do full-on creatures inside Keyshot, because I find it easier to render full creatures rather than busts. But for this one, I decided to break the norm and try something different. I'm not going to go into full details on how I actually make the render or how it actually works inside a Keyshot. You can actually find a tutorial that I'm selling online for that purpose, and I'll leave a link below where you can check that out. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just making materials on my character work. Then I'm going to put an environment in the background that has an HDR environment, which gives me some good lighting, realistic lighting, and then I'll add some extra lights as well. I'll play around with the camera angle as well. It's just a lot easier to do this inside a Keyshot than it is to do it all inside of ZBrush. Again, if you're interested, you can go check out that tutorial. So right now you can see I'm adding a spotlight. So I'll create a disk, then I'll look in the folder for a light, a sort of light that comes with Keyshot, and I'll add that spotlight, and then I'll go in and I'll start to adjust the light. As you can see now, adjust the light to give it a bit more of an interesting lit character. Now this process can take up to about 30 minutes to do. I've just sped it along a little bit more because no one really wants to watch 30 minutes of me figuring out where the best light is or the best camera angle is for this character. Once I've done with all that, then I'll start to render out some of the layers that I'll be using. So the beauty, a matte, an ambient occlusion, a reflection material, a rim light, and a mask. And then once all that is out, then I'll just take that into Photoshop and then start to composite that image to a sort of conceptual standard. And then that's pretty much all the hard work done, all the backlog work done to get the image to make a composition inside of Photoshop. And it's quite a long process, but it is the type of work that you will expect to see when doing creature designs. So I'm going to leave it now. We'll jump into Photoshop and I'll see you there. So once all the renders are rendered out of Keyshot, I brought them into Photoshop, and this is where we're going to start to actually composite all those final images into a sort of composition that can be used for a conceptual piece to show a client, or for your portfolio to show a company that you're trying to get hired to. As you can see, it's going very quickly. I'm not going to run through everything that's happening. There is a tutorial that I created, many tutorials I created on how I do composition inside of Photoshop. I will say one thing, I think I might have kept the black background a bit later on, because I think the black background with the character in front was enough, but I decided to add some background elements, so clouds, to just give it an environment to work in. So the benefit of using Keyshot to do the renders that I have found is that you get a lot of the information straight away, rather than doing the ZBrush technique where you'll have to composite more images on top of each other to get a really good final look. If you can do as much work as you can inside a Keyshot to get that final look before you bring it to Photoshop, then it's pretty much just touching up the characters' colors or painting in areas that need to be painted to finish it off, because Keyshot does most of the bulk of the work for you. Unfortunately, I found that the model I created wasn't 100% like the concept, and I wish that I'd spent a bit more time in the actual sculpting pass, nailing those sort of features a bit more. Unfortunately, I ran out of time to make that possible. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm gonna probably come back to this creature and do the full body version once I have some spare time. As you can see now, I'm trying my hardest to make the character fit the background a bit better, giving it some color in the background to match the color of the sort of scales on him. And then I also went in with the brush and added some saliva just to give it a bit more life. So it looks like he's just opened his mouth and there's saliva hanging from the teeth. Of course, once you've done all the compositing of the renders from Keyshot, then you can go in and you can start adding some extra details like the eyeballs, which you'll see now. I'm just adding some of those irises to the eyes from the concept, and then also using images from online, textures from online. You can add texture to your composite to enhance the sort of textures of your character. Because remember, we did all the painting inside of ZBrush, but it was very quick painting. It wasn't going in and giving specific details on the sort of sculpt. It was more just adding color so we can get it into Keyshot to render. Now that we're inside of Photoshop, we can actually add detail from images to your creature that weren't there before. And then once all that is done, I'll then just start adding the adjustment layers, which then just bring the whole concept together, adjusting some levels, adjusting the brightness, adjusting the contrast, adjusting color variations and anything like that, just to bring the concept together a bit better. Of course, there's always the problem of overcooking your image. You don't want to overcook your image too much. You want to kind of let it breathe and also not do too much to your image. Otherwise, it'll just become destroyed and look too fake. You want to try and limit yourself to what you do with your image. Otherwise, you'll just ruin it completely. And so we're coming to the end of the video now. We've got a few more minutes left to watch. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's supporting me on YouTube and all my other socials. I also want to thank Taran Fiddler for letting me use his work. And if you want, please go and check out his social medias and the links below in the description box. I want to thank all my Patreons for supporting me. You can also support me through Patreon. The links are in the description box as well. And yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a very quick video, but I find these quicker videos more interesting, and you guys get to hear me ramble on about how I created or what goes through my mind. So I just want to thank everybody, and please have a safe and happy Halloween. Take care.
Ha